Hello, beloveds. Welcome to the Amanda Collins podcast. It's my honor to help you awaken to joy, be your greatest self, and live a life you love. I'm Amanda Collins. Each week, I'll share tips, practices, and rituals to help you feel the storehouse of joy inside. I'll answer your questions and talk with thought leaders from around the world about health, wealth, love, conscious living, and parenting. Are you ready to live your most fulfilled life? Welcome to episode 35. Jamie is the proud mother of two radiant girls. She's been a licensed acupuncturist with a Master's of Science in Traditional Oriental Medicine since 2006. She started her journey with women's health in 2002 as a home birth midwife assistant. Jamie attended the Pacific College Oriental Medicine, and she completed internships with Rady's Children's Hospital, UCSD, Geriatric Clinic, and San Diego Hospice. She also studied gynecology and pediatrics in China at the Chengdu University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Being trained in two of the oldest healing arts has offered her a unique vantage point in understanding the causes and conditions of wellness in this human life. Jamie sees a wide variety of medical conditions in her office. Patients range from a couple of days to 100 years old, and Jamie has a deep love and curiosity of Western medicine and tries to stay current with treatment, strategies, diagnostic tools, and pharmaceuticals to forge a more integrative approach with her care. She bridges the gap between the modern Western medicine and traditional Chinese medicine to help teach her patients about the disease process or to help them understand how preventative medicine can be used to ward off potential disease processes from occurring. She strives to empower her patients to educate themselves about their health and become proactive in the healing process. I am so grateful to have Jamie Boyd here with us today. Jamie, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Well, I am so grateful to have Jamie here. Jamie helped me through 2 pregnancies, breastfeeding, and actually through a miscarriage, and then just kind of bringing my body back into balance after pregnancy and breastfeeding and kind of getting ready for my second pregnancy and birth and everything. So I'm just so honored to have you here. You have helped so many women, men, and babies, but like families. And I know that you're just wanting to help create balance in people's emotional, spiritual, and physical bodies. So I'd first love to just kind of dive into why did you get into Chinese medicine and acupuncture?
Well, I was initially drawn to Asian religions and studies. I think around maybe 8th or 9th grade, I read The Tao of Pu, which is a very classic book about Taoism. And it was the first time I ever read something that understood my mind or way of being. It was an aha moment for me. And I was raised, by Midwestern parents in St. Louis, Missouri. I traveled a lot and I was raised Christian. And I always felt like something didn't fit, or I wasn't integrating my reality in a way that really resonated with my heart or way of being. And I read The Tao of Pu, which is a great book by Benjamin Hoff, and I started just voraciously reading about Taoism and Buddhism. I did my undergraduate degree in religion and Asian studies. I was a double major, and I wrote a 100-page thesis because I went to a writing school on Tibetan Buddhist art and what it meant for the mind, body, and emotional basically intelligence of the body. So it was about the 5 Buddha families, which translates as you know, as feng shui, the 5 elements. So I was kind of obsessed with the artistic representation of the 5 elements. And I was terrified of needles though. So every time everyone in my department told me I needed to go to acupuncture, I said, actually I even did a classical Chinese translation course where we translated parts of acupuncture scripture and writing, the Yellow Emperor's Guide, our classic. And I still wouldn't go because I was scared of needles. But after going to India and living in India for about 5 months for a study abroad program and really studying Buddhism very intensely, I just had a vision that I was supposed to in some way be a healer. And I felt like it really corresponded with the idea of right livelihood, to be of service and in service to people. And I love geeking out on classical Chinese philosophies of medicine. And it just occurred that by the time I was 22, I moved to San Diego to go to Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, and I became an acupuncturist in 2006. So that's, there's more details than that, but that was how it happened. But it really was a great blend of me being able to be the nerdy historian that I love to be, while still thinking about anthropology and medicine. Like, how do these ancient ideas of the body correspond with modern day life? And then how can I stop your period cramps related to a Tang Dynasty idea that I can bring into the modern era?
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
So I get to be deeply nerdy and help people at the same time, which I really enjoy.
That's so beautiful. And what I'm hearing is you totally got to the truth of who you are and what brings you alive. And it was like a mixture of this deep philosophy, this medicine, and just wanting to be of service. And I know, because I've been on that end, when you walk into that room, and first of all, you're so physically beautiful, and then you just have so much compassion and love and wisdom, where you step into the room, it's like, she's seeing inside my body, inside my soul, my energy field. And it's like you work, I don't know, like step by step, and then just bring it all together. And we were chatting a little bit beforehand, and you were explaining a little bit about, I love this, that you said emotional and spiritual medicine, and I love that you kind of even brought in poetry and the link between the heart and the uterus and the kidney and the uterus. And so I am fascinated to hear more about that.
Well, it's something that I'm pretty obsessed with, just the notion in general in my life, and then in my practice, my acupuncture practice. But it's this idea of embodiment. We are currently in bodies, which is pretty darn amazing. And we are so complex, and yet we are embodied. And what does that mean? And from any religious perspective or spiritual perspective, I mean, there's something going on here. I really feel like, for me, the curiosity of being in a body, by being as emotionally and spiritually complex as we are, while still in a physical body that goes through old age, sickness, and death, right? What does it all mean? And what is the poetry of that? Not only in the big, broad spectrum of being a human being and how we choose to be a human being in this lifetime, but also moment to moment. We're just, especially here in Southern California, we're driving 80 miles an hour on the freeway, and then we go to our acupuncturist, and then we talk about something very deep, and then we go back out and drive 80 miles again in our car. And what that does to the body, just the physical body going that speed, and the adrenaline, and all of the stressors of daily life, and then still seeking and looking for deeper meaning. I find it really poignant with how fast time moves right now, and how stressed out we really are. How do we get deeper meaning, and how do we integrate our emotional and our spiritual aspects in our body? And what's nice about acupuncture is we have very distinct points for that. And I know you and I talked about earlier, one of the things that I'm really fascinated by, especially in women's health, is right now I'm really geeking out on this one meridian called the Bao Mai, which is the way that the heart connects to the uterus, and then the kidneys also connect to the uterus. And really getting really interested in the spiritual, emotional, and physical ramifications of this meridian. Just for really basic things, the way that the Chinese believed when they started talking about the Bao Mai, the blood came to the uterus was through the heart. They believed that they didn't have dissection of the human body because it was so sacred at that point. So they could only believe that the blood that women menstruated out was from the heart, because that's obviously also what made babies.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that's fascinating, right? So if you have somebody who has menstrual cramps, somebody who has an inability to get pregnant, somebody who has any problems during pregnancy or birth, any of those kinds of things, it gets really curious, because it's the heart function just as a actual organ to provide the blood for the uterus, according to Chinese medicine. There again, of course, biomedically, we know that they might look a lot different. But what does that mean? And the points also obviously have deep spiritual and emotional ramifications. The quality that I like the most, though, is that all of the explanations for this meridian, it links the spirit with the will. So pushing a baby out, we need to link spirit and will together in order to get a baby out. But it also has love and joy in it. So this idea of maybe oxytocin, which is what creates labor. It also is very helpful in fertility to have high levels of oxytocin. And what's interesting is oxytocin from a biomedical perspective can't exist when cortisol and adrenaline are present. So when we're fear, which is another aspect of the kidney, when the kidney is firing by itself without the heart, without the shen, without the spirit, we have fear. But when the heart connects with the kidneys, then we have movement in the uterus, which is pretty darn amazing. And there's acupuncture points for it in all of its different forms and all of its different ways it shows up clinically. But it's something I'm really geeking out on
That's
right now in my practice.
Well, that's amazing, because if you consider, like, we go through all of those emotions all day long, from fear to joy to, and of course, what I love so much about the Tao and Zen Buddhism is it's always inviting us into that, like, that medium of balance, not going from the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows. And the other thing that I'm really interested is, you talked, and it's so true, because, people might rush to their acupuncture or their massage appointment or their yoga class. And you mentioned, like, they're going 80 down the motorway, and then they're maybe rushing to get here or rushing to get there. Like, what does that do to our bodies when we're in that kind of state?
Yeah. Well, it keeps us locked into the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mode, which is actually adrenaline and cortisol, which, again, you can't have oxytocin if you're in that state. It can't be present. So a lot of what I worry about in terms of, I'll just do it from like a microcosm population, but like infertility, for instance, I have really high power career oriented women who have delayed probably having children until later in life, which is totally normal here in Southern California. And they function on high levels of adrenaline and cortisol, and then dopamine, which is our transmitter for competition, to compete, which is very much based into our educational system of rewards, of getting A's, being the best in your class. And they've been running on those neurotransmitters for so dang long that actually the uterus is a secondary organ. So when you're on cortisol, adrenaline, and dopamine, which is what it takes to get down the highway, you are shunting blood flow to all of your secondary organs, which are your intestines, which is why we have so many digestive problems. Only your heart and lungs are getting the full information. Heart, lungs, and brain are getting the full information in your body. That's why you feel so alert and awake when you're on adrenaline, is because you can actually think really sharply and clearly. However, the bottom half of your body is completely unplugged. So they're only getting enough blood supply to stay turned on and alive so the tissue doesn't get necrotic, but it's not getting full attention. So I always feel like in my office, I'm always trying to plug people in. When they come in, they need a 30-minute bath of parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. So I jokingly say I pretty much knock out all of my patients, and part of it's because of the lifestyle here. The old Chinese literature, there's no reason to knock out your patients. Actually, it's contraindicated because it would disperse your qi and it would weaken your qi. But everyone is so revved up, especially in my community. I feel like it's my first line of service to give them a nap, because they desperately need one, because I have to actually turn off the full computer in order to reboot it again, because the levels are so high. And then doing that in a continual way and hoping that it stays plugged in after seeing me, that starts to get enough nourishment to the uterus or to the digestion to have those organs start to respond more appropriately and hormonally normally, so that they can get pregnant and receive the information that their body wants to, be receptive and conceive. So it's kind of fascinating, right? So it's like the highway is just the highway, but actually it's one piece of this overarching cultural landscape that we have, especially in America and in Southern California, which is my population I usually work with, where we're so revved up all the time that we're actually physically struggling to connect with a major part of our body. And then we're asking our body to have a baby or to do that. And it's like, it's not even online.
Yeah. And we have all sorts of amazing listeners, and some that, won't want to have children, or, will have passed that stage. So I'm just wondering, when we talk about, really that second half of our body, which is to grounding and connection, but then it's also to do with our sexuality and our sensuality. So you probably get like really low libido and everything.
I treat a lot of people, men and women, with the same exact paradigm. Yeah, I said like the micropopulation fertility, but absolutely it affects every aspect current Western life, and probably world over. I mean, there's lots of stressors, but we have particularly moved so fast. I deal with male reproductive health in terms of like erectile dysfunction and low libido, women low libido, all sorts of lack of orgasm, pain, vulvodynia, any of that. Because for men, there are aspects of adrenaline that are important for fertility and for reproduction. So actually they need that sort of go conquer, take over sort of thing as part of their sexuality. In women, it's really a deep sense of, it's the oxytocin. It's the deep connection of heart and uterus, heart and kidneys, heart and lower part of the body. And if the heart chi or heart blood is not descending, you will be completely cut off. And the same thing with, I think that the same paradigm is what's happening in the West with how horrible some of our menopauses are. I mean, the level of suffering that some of my women have around menopause versus what's in the literature in ancient China is just ridiculous. Like, we really aren't tolerating menopause well. And there's probably many, many reasons. There's diet, there's environment, there's all sorts of things. But I do think that this does play a role in that we, our body starts to go through these physiological changes that deal with the lower half of the body or the bottom chakras or however you want to look at it. And that energy just has never been organized, balanced. It's been largely ignored, and then it's time for change and things really flare up and hit the fan,
Yeah. So, a couple of things, and this is just so interesting to hear, and just like, if we know it, just such like amazing reminders. So when people come in, whether it be man, woman, whatever stage in their life, and you're seeing these tendencies, like, just what are some of the things that you say, look, this is what you have to start integrating into your life? Because they come in and yes, you reboot the computer and get them back into balance. But then if they leave that and go straight into 80 miles an hour, like, so what are lifestyle changes that you invite?
Well, I'm a long-term meditator and Buddhist, like 20 years. And I used to always recommend, meditation and yoga. But I find that actually some of my patients are so revved up that that's just one more stressor. And, we go into right, wrong thinking and shame, blame, and guilt very easily in our culture. So then if I ask them to do something that they aren't doing, then they feel guilty about not doing it. So what I've switched is to this, what I call an oxytocin bath. And I make them either listen to comedy for 30 minutes every day. Oh. I'm like, you're stuck in traffic. You need to stream your favorite comedian on Pandora or whatever you're listening to. I've had men's erectile dysfunction correct after a week's worth of just doing their commute, listening to comedy.
I just got chills. That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? And, I used to be like, oh, you need to meditate. But, that even, like, I want people to get to the point of meditation and yoga, and certainly like feng shui and making sure that their house and home, the balance is there, that they feel at home, they're able to truly relax. All of that's very important. But I have people so frazzled that if I suggest those things, and that's just one more thing they're not going to do that week, and then they're going to feel shame, blame, guilt about not doing it. So I try to find out where the person's at and say, hey, could you at least plug this in? For breastfeeding, for lactation, I used to try to, we'll have a calm environment. Well, you might have 2 toddlers running around and a baby, and it's never going to be calm. So I say, well, can you put your headphones on and watch The Bachelor if you're a heterosexual woman who's struggling with lactation and that's something you like? I try to find out what thing produces oxytocin in this person, and then I make that their daily exercise. I say, you need 30 minutes of uninterrupted oxytocin. If that means reading romance novels, awesome. If that means comedy, you try to figure out what is the least invasive, least daunting way, because everyone's so stressed out. One more thing is just one more thing. That's just, so I try to figure out, like, well, what is something truly enjoyable that you like, that you could do 30 minutes every day, so that you can truly de-stress. And then I try to look for that. So if it's painting, if they're an artist, well, that's pretty easy because hopefully they can plug that in and they can see that. But if it's somebody who's just really never had any kind of practice like that, the least they can do is listen to comedy while they're making, dinner. And I know that seems kind of crazy because I'd like to give you some sort of like, of course, I will go down the road of like, alkaline foods and how to help your body and all of those things. And I do talk about nutrition, diet, lifestyle, and all sorts of stuff. And I encourage yoga and meditation. But again, if there's a listener here who's like, I just can't do any more of that stuff, or that stuff isn't working for me, I also want to say, I can let you off the hook, and you could just, watch 20 minutes of Netflix. I don't know how it is there, but here in Southern California, there's such judgment around it. So my healthy families are so healthy that they prevent their own joy because they're so healthy. And when I see that pattern, I go, okay, have you ever watched Dave Chappelle? Because I think you need to watch the Dave Chappelle show. I try to go like, well, wait a second. How do we bring this into harmony? Because, sometimes my patients are so gung-ho about healthy lifestyles that they're actually forgetting to enjoy it. And what's the most important thing to stop adrenaline and cortisol and dopamine is this oxytocin, which is just pure joy and love and laughter.
Oh my gosh, like I love what you're saying right now. I love it because it's like meeting them where they're at. And I to hear you, it's like, you're telling me to meditate. Okay, that just feels like it's even more stress. So I love that. And it kind of brings me to, I know you are a single mom of two amazing, beautiful girls. And then you run this extremely successful, where there's a line going down the street at a waiting list for 10 years. So like, and I know it's like anybody goes to see you and they just, that's it. As you said, they come to see you from getting their body ready for fertility to all the way through to menopause, and not that you're 105, but
for the listener, I've been in practice 11 years, and I was I didn't mention this in my bio. I was an assistant home birth midwife, right, in 2002 to 2006. So I was a part of the Encinitas midwifery crew during that time, and was there for several babies being born. So that's also why I have this longevity with these families, is because I was literally there at the time of birth for their kiddos.
Oh, it's beautiful. Well, but the thing is it's clear to me, you've been doing this for lifetimes anyway. So, but like my question is, here you are with these two beautiful girls, this thriving practice. What are your kind of, like, I like to call them your non-negotiables that you maintain your own balance?
Well, I was extremely fortunate to at 20 years old to live in Bodh Gaya, India, for a program called Buddhist Studies program, and live in a monastery for 5 months and practice twice a day. And then I went back as a teacher after I was done with acupuncture school. I went back as a teaching assistant and then a teacher of the contemplative traditions course. I think I was 29, and I did another 5 months. So I had built in, before I became a parent, a really good structure for meditation, but also a type of mind that was way more flexible. So I was blessed to have that. And I think I need to say that first, because being a single parent in a place that's as expensive as San Diego and running a wellness center the way that I do, there is very little balance. And I try to add balance wherever I can, but the nature of I don't have my family here, so the lack of support that I have, there is a natural imbalance that is always present. And at first I tried to pretend like there wasn't, and I did all these things and scurried around and built up this like armor of daily life routines to really keep myself strong in it. But I have found now that the more tender and open and loving I am to myself, the more forgiving I am to myself, the more I can lean into that. You know what? It's disharmonious, and that's okay. Life, it can be disharmonious, and I'm okay with that. So I'm starting to learn how to rest in and ride the waves of every moment something else is happening, something else is coming up, how to be settled and calm in the midst of that storm. And one of the main ways I do that is I have this incredible teacher named Chokinima Rinpoche, who is a Vajrayana teacher in the Nyingma and Nyingma and Kayu lineages. And he has this quote that he told me when I was 20, and it's really what I live by. I have it on my refrigerator. I remind myself often. But his thing is to remain as calm, as kind, and as clear as possible. And so moment to moment, every time something arises, I remind myself of that. So I'm really trying to live in a meditative state. I'm really trying to go, you know what? I'm really angry about that. Okay, I see it. I'm going to remain as kind, calm, and clear as possible. I acknowledge it. I know why I'm angry. I know how to fix it. Okay, next moment. Because as you know, life is so busy. Life is so busy, and it's so complicated. And I used to sort of almost block my own life. Like, there's nothing more upsetting than trying to meditate and have your toddlers interrupted, like, repeatedly. And although I can meditate in short bursts to mom, 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 it just isn't workable if the support isn't there. And so I try to, I've meditated just enough to know where peace is and how to access it. So I take my deep breaths, I refocus, I center, and I ask myself, I want to be real and honest with myself. I don't want to subvert my emotions or stuff them in, or, okay, I know what I'm feeling. I see why I'm feeling that. Can I still be kind to others? Okay. Can I still be clear? All right, okay, I'm going to be as calm as possible, and then I'm going to move to the next thing. And I am going to deal with it because I love myself enough to deal with whatever came up. I'm not going to subvert it, which I find very important as women to say it's totally okay to feel all the feelings and to act on all of the feelings, but it's also important to love yourself enough to know that you want to stay calm and kind in the moment, because we don't want to compound our feelings by acting out, right? So I try to balance that. And, I do have a meditation practice. I have this great group of practitioners that I go up to in Encinitas that do this green Tara practice that I really love. I went on retreat this year with my children. I bring my children on retreat. I'm not sure everybody's happy about this. In fact, I know a lot of people aren't happy, but since the time they were born, I go and see my teacher every year, and I bring my girls with me on retreat. And it means that I don't always hear all the talks, and I definitely don't get to do all the meditation. But I bring coloring books, and we go into the Buddha hall, and I listen to teachings with my children until they tap out, and then I leave. And I know that my expectation is I'm not going to hear all of it. I'm not going to get to see all of it, but I at least need to check in and have that in my life. So my main practice right now is devotion. I go every year to see my teacher. And I think anybody who has a religious tradition or has a strong spirituality, whatever it is, to live clearly by that and make sure you have it in your life as much as you have access to. At the same time, being completely flexible and knowing the parameters of your situation. I bring my kids. It doesn't always work. They're getting better.
First of all, obviously, you would check in with this retreat center and they say welcome. Well, then it's welcome for kindness for everyone. But what I have found, have been a number of times, I'm sure it's more challenging with both, but what I have found, and I would love to ask you about this, but obviously these retreats are about finding balance and inner peace. And so I have brought either my son or my daughter, usually just one of them, but like just last week, I was at this beautiful 3-hour, it was going to be like deep breath meditation and actually connecting with all the plants and, what you foraging, what you can eat and how they're medicinal and everything. And so I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll probably just kind of run around the meadow with my daughter, but we get there and the first 45 minutes is breath. And we literally gazed in each other's eyes for 45 minutes and she breathed with me the entire time. So I'm sure you find this, I find this, like if my children's energy is off, the first thing I do is kind of check myself. And that whole surrounding was about presence and love and breath. And she just met me right there.
And my girls have done the same to their own capacity. Now, most of the retreats we go on, it's like 3 to 5 hours of sometimes instruction. So at some point, my girls, my oldest knows the chants. What I do now, my girls are now 9 and 6, and we went to Nepal for the first time to see my teacher in the fall. So we went for 2.5 weeks to his fall seminar. And my thing is with them is they have to come in to do the prayers, to do the meditation. They do have to be there and be quiet and still, and try to meditate if they can. And then they stay in until tea time. So it's usually from like 9 to 11 or 8:30 to 11. And then after that, they're allowed to go run around the monastery.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's pretty safe, Yeah, they're having a very different life than some people. But, I know my community really well. I will say though, Amanda, at first, it was not welcome for me to bring the children. I baby bombed my community for quite some time. And, it needs to change. Women need to be able to show up with children. Now, in Asia, inviting women to participate at all means inviting children, because women and children are not separate. In the West, a lot of women use retreats as an escape from their children, which is great, but it's not always okay for other women. It actually excludes anybody who can't afford childcare or anybody who doesn't have a partner. So I just kept showing up, and we've had a major change in that. We've had a major revelation in our community. And then there's more communities now, especially in the Buddhist world, like at Tara Mandala in Colorado with Lama Tsultrim Alioni, who's an American woman who runs it, kids are always welcome. You know, we're slowly changing the demographic of that. And I encourage anybody listening who feels uncomfortable with bringing their children for spiritual practice or worship to start to really question that. I know as a child, I mean, sometimes forcefully, I was made to sit through church, but I learned how to do it. And I could sit, and I actually love being in sacred space because I was made to sit through church as a child. So hopefully I do it in a much more loving, kind way, and hopefully my kids are enjoying it a little bit more than some of the things I went through. But this excluding kids from spiritual activity because we want this sort of type of peace and silence, I really deeply question, especially within my faith in Buddhism. You know, there's this idea in the West that everything has to be quiet and still. But actually, if you live in Bodh Gaya, which is where the Buddha attained enlightenment, and you go to practice and you sit, and this is the major hub for Buddhism, you know, world over, everyone comes there to practice. It is the loudest place on earth. I mean, there is nothing louder or more obnoxious than Bodh Gaya, India. And people go there to deeply practice. And there is nowhere you can go.
I mean, it's so easy to go up in absolute silence of the mountains, like to meditate. That's easy. It's finding your own inner peace in the busyness of it all, and the noise,
and being able to not have the distraction of mind. You know, if it's so agitating to have one child in a Buddha hall, your practice really isn't very strong yet, you know, and not to say that I'm a great practitioner by any means. My monkey mind is all over the place, but I just question this sort of stoic, absolute silent form of spirituality. I mean, there should be internal peace, and at the same time, there should be joy and understanding of life's processes all the way. We were all children. You know, we were all kids, and we should be allowed to come and eye gaze for 45 minutes and then do a meditation with the plants, right? Like, anyway, so I have to throw that out there because I do have a little bit of a soapbox revolution.
No, I love that, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like, of course, like, I mean, isn't it all about unity, right? Whether we're younger or older, male or female, right?
Yes, and to expose our children to this at such an early age, to show them connection and embodiment and practicing of not being distracted and practicing quiet and silence. I mean, there's never been a time where it's more important that our children see that as a model. So to not have them have access to some of these more alternative spiritual communities is unfortunate. So in exploring where I could go to practice my spirituality with my children, it was very difficult. And I even the first couple of years just didn't tell them I was coming, and I would just like bomb the retreat center because I knew that if I'd gone to Nepal, of course, with babies, I would be fine. I knew if I went to Tibetan community, that would be fine. But I knew in Northern California at a very expensive retreat center, it might be problematic. And I really wanted to see my teacher. And I knew that my teacher would be okay with it, chances are, you know? So I just, I did a small act of irreverence, but I needed it and it's selfish, but I needed it for my peace of mind because I didn't know if I could make it another year. Yeah. I was going through such a horrible time in my life. Mm-hmm. I needed that connection, and to exclude women who don't have access to childcare or who are unable to make it to their spiritual, the thing that, you know, I guess I'm just saying, women, be brave. Show up anyway. Show up anyway. I mean, you know what you're. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it's such a beautiful foundation for our children. I mean, look at even mainstream schools. They're talking about getting rid of detention and replacing that with meditation.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. So I'm hearing you, like, your meditation practice. Like, so what are some other things that really help you, you know, stay grounded and balanced?
Well, I make sure, like for me, I make sure I get acupuncture at least once a month, even if I don't. I just always do, because I need somebody to harmonize my body and, you know, change, you know, in case I've been stuck in fight or flight. I usually do acupuncture, at least one type of body work a month. I usually get a massage once a month. You know, I do see a therapist and have for years to have just conventional talk therapy, because it is important, especially as a single mom, to have somebody who's a sounding off board for you, who you can communicate with, who can hold your stories, because I don't have that partner at home to do that. Those are all really important things. For me, I'm a crazy gardener, so I have to be in soil. If all else fails, my hands have to be in dirt regularly. Um, I love gardening, and that's something that's so easy to do with children and so easy to kind of do in a busy life, especially here in San Diego, because everything grows. You can really know almost nothing about gardening and feel successful. I'm also just an avid reader, and for me, one of my main joys in life is curiosity and always learning something new. That's really important to me. So I would say, I'm a voracious reader. Now, as a single parent, Audible is my best friend because I can listen to it while doing the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that is called reading anymore. I'm listening. I'm an
Yeah.
avid listener, maybe. um, so those are the kinds of things that I really do to instill peace. I really love feng shui, and ever since I took your class, I make sure that my home is balanced and the energy is moving correctly, and that I feel joy in my home. I think that that's really important.
Mm.
Um,
Of course, I'm right there with you this whole conversation. And it's like we've talked about this before. People can come in, have this whole beautiful rebalancing, but if they go to a home that's completely out of balance, well, it's not going to support them. And whereas if they
mhm.
get their home in balance, they go home from this beautiful session with you or wherever they get acupuncture or massages, and then they're supported, and it maintains that so much longer.
And that's exactly why I did the course with you originally, although I haven't been practicing feng shui. I have such a busy clinical practice. I have not yet done a feng shui external practice other than for myself, but it's absolutely essential. It is absolutely essential and necessary to have your environment harmonized if you're going to maintain any harmony. And also, it can be said about nutrition and diet as well. It's like you said, if there's something just completely out of whack at home, that habituation, that habit, that flow is going to be impeded right away. What I always like to think about in terms of acupuncture, and I'm sure this could be said of feng shui, but a metaphor I always use for my patients, which I think is really applicable, is I always say that, if we were to think of our bodies like planet Earth, and again, we maybe could think of the home this way too. We thought of our bodies as planet Earth, and like the continents were the bones and the muscles, and then the seas were the blood, the hormones, all the yin fluids, all the fluids of the body. What governs life on Earth, other than the sun, is the atmosphere and the way that the winds blow. If there is any interruption or disruption in the ways that the winds blow on planet Earth, it greatly impacts and changes everything about the environments of the continents. All of a sudden you're getting hurricanes. I mean, we've witnessed this over the last several years. We're getting hurricanes, we get droughts, these major shifts occur. And that's true of our body. We have this energetic body, and it's called the system of wind. The meridians are literally the winds of the body. When they are disharmonious, or they've never been organized or energetically evened out over a lifetime of trauma and ups and downs and highs and lows, we have long-term, deserts and hurricanes and rainforests in the wrong place and all these climatic changes that have happened, which lead to pathology in the body. And it's true of the home. It's that way. If the winds are not moving correctly in the home, there are areas of stagnation that never get addressed. Those turn into real pathology, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. So it's incredibly important.
Oh
I
my
know
God.
I know I'm speaking to the choir here. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, it's
I
this
love
same
that. It
thing
was
with you.
like poetry the way you were explaining that. It's so beautiful.
Well, I think it's really applicable. People can really understand it when they look at it that way, because here in San Diego, you look up in the sky and oftentimes it's completely clear blue, and you're like, yeah, we're the incredible fortunate recipients of an atmosphere that happens to move a certain way. But if that were to change, our whole lives would be different, right? And it's subtle. We look up, it's a blue sky, okay, everything's okay. You're like, no, but you have to understand that the winds, when they're disrupted, can cause all sorts of erosion and problems. I don't know. It makes it really applicable, because a lot of people are like, well, what is acupuncture? How could that even possibly work? Or how could feng shui even possibly work? And you're like, no, actually, it's maybe the most important thing is how the wind blows through your home or in your body.
Oh my
Anyway,
gosh, I love that. I love that. You are just so amazing, like a wealth full of knowledge. And I would just love to ask you one last question. And that
okay.
is between the unconditional love and that you give those two beautiful girls, and then the the village that comes through your office every day of service that you give. What could we do in this moment to be of service to you?
Wow. It's awesome that you're asking me that. Um, I don't know, if there's anything of benefit and anything that we've talked about, just, send some love and light back, Every human being needs love and light,
That would be our absolute
Intention,
pleasure.
intention is everything. If there can be, some karmic intention my way, some sort of love and light, then that's great. I have deep trust and faith in the universe, and it's it's miraculous. It led me to all sorts of interesting things, and I think tap into subtle energy and just send a little bit my way if there's anything of benefit that I've done for anybody, or any benefit from this conversation that anyone gets. I would gladly accept it. I don't know if that's what you mean, but
yeah, absolutely.
let's do it from that perspective, because everybody could use a little bit of that, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm sending it like unconditional love and light your way. And thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom and just your story and your journey, and just so much great information.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. It's so awesome to talk to somebody like yourself who, gosh, talk about a woman's tribe. My goodness, you are incredible, and you've done such incredible things in your lifetime. It's such an honor to have a conversation with you, and it's so enjoyable. I love speaking with you.
I love you, and I could talk all day, but I am so grateful. Thank you. Now I'd love to hear from you. How do you maintain balance in your life and bring in more joy, which ultimately improves your health? Let me know your answers in the comments below. Do your best to share as much detail as you can, because thousands of incredible souls come here each week for insight and inspiration. And your story may be just what someone else needs to hear to have their own breakthrough. Thanks, beloveds, for joining us today. Please come over to themandacons.com to continue the conversation and get access to all my podcasts, blogs, and videos. Did you enjoy this podcast? If so, please subscribe to the Amanda Cons podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Feel free to pass this podcast on to your friends. That helps us get incredible guests to share their secrets for an inspired and joyful life. If you want more great resources, come over to amandacons.com and join my mailing list for all my latest content. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm sending